Well, good afternoon and welcome to Stribe Sessions, where we're focused on how to provide financial and mental health support in the workplace. My name is Mike Brennan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a wonderful organization called Stribe, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's Stribe Sessions, which I believe is now beginning to trend. So thank you to our audience for all of your support to date. This is the fifth in our series focused on particular topics around supporting the mental health and well-being, and this one in particular is around how we're providing financial support in the workplace. Today's agenda will be some welcomes and introductions to the panel. We'll have a wonderful presentation from Work Life by Open Money, and then a huge Q&A session, I hope, with the audience. We've had a huge turnout of over 100 sign-ups to this webinar this morning, so I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. So this is designed to be an interactive session, a webinar in which you can ask the experts effectively around well-being and financial well-being some key top tips. There's a box at the bottom that says Q&A. If you can click on that box and throughout the conversation, throughout the presentation, ask your questions, and at the end I will just go down the list and direct them to our panel as we move forwards and answer them the best we can. There's a wonderful vote up button that we love. If you click on the question that you like, it votes up to the top of the list and I'll answer it faster. So please, please, please get all of your questions in as we move forward. This year has been an extremely turbulent time for people's finances, from those that are able to save and those that are not. The Money Charity recently reported that 30% of UK households have experienced an income reduction. And mental health and money problems are often linked. Poor financial health can lead to poor mental health, which leads to increasingly poor financial health and vice versa. In England, 46% of people in debt also have a mental health problem, according to Money and Mental Health 2020. There can also be a significant impact for employers because financial anxiety can lead to long-term stress and poor mental health and physical health, resulting in absences, lower performance and increased turnover, which becomes very expensive on human capital and also on the financial side. So wow, how are we going to cover such important topics within the hour, you ask? Well, I'm delighted to be joined by a financial wellbeing expert and the managing director of Work Life by Open Money, Rob Marshall. Rob, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
Yeah, very well indeed, thank you. Could you introduce yourself, who you are and what you do to our wonderful audience today?
Yeah, so I am the managing director, as you mentioned, of Work Life by Open Money. I run the employee benefits division of the business. Open Money, we're a business that was established 4 years ago now, primarily to fill what we see as an advice gap in the UK for most people. So when you are thinking about an individual looking for financial advice, most financial advisors in the UK are looking for the top 5% of earners because they want people with cash to invest. And at Open Money, we decided to launch a business where nobody would be excluded from that process. We understand that everybody is at a certain point on that financial journey from the starting point to getting to reach their goals. So we've been working to create technology which can help people. We have people on the ground, physical people, financial advisors to do that. And we launched Work Life about a year ago with the idea being that we realised with 17 million people working for an SME business in the UK, that it was a great place to really speak to individuals, to talk to them about money, about finances, about creating wealth, all those different sorts of things. So I joined the business just over a year ago. My background is in consulting, so I've worked for BNY Mellon, Mazars, who I came from, a global accounting business, a book consultant. So I've done various consulting roles, and it was always with, I guess, the largest size employers and multinationals. And the thing that drew me to Open Money is that we wanted to do something to ensure that SME businesses and businesses with, say, sub 500 employees weren't getting left behind. They were able to access the benefits that large employers give, the support services, the education services, so that whether you own a chip shop with 3 employees or you're an FT 250 business, even an FT 100 business, the things that you can access and support you can give to your employees, it shouldn't be a barrier. So that's what we're working towards at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. And 2 more little questions before we get started.
Yeah.
Why is financial well-being such an important topic to you personally? I know obviously that's your day job and you're the MD, but ultimately leading that ship, there's got to be kind of a passion and impact line, as I have within Stribe, about supporting the mental health of employees. What is it for you is around.
Yeah, I think anybody that's worked in any business, I think there are always times in everybody's life where there are low points and there are high points, and the majority of that is around mental health and well-being. It's physical well-being, I think, has been fairly well addressed over the last 10, 15, 20 years with cycles to work and gym and all these sorts of things. I think everyone's aware that we all need to eat a bit healthier, look after ourselves, do a bit of exercise. I think it's always been something that people have struggled to verbalize and to discuss and to be openly honest about. And I think for me, the biggest change is probably in the last 2 to 3 years, where maybe people in the public eye have really come out and spoken about, look at people like Tyson Fury and others in the business world, even successful CEOs, where they're quite confident now, comfortable coming out and talking about stress, and those stress triggers can be anything within their personal lives. And given it the fact that we probably spend 40 to 60 hours a week with people that aren't our family, aren't our friends, that we're around, it makes sense, I think, to be able to have those conversations with people that you work with, and that your employer understands what those issues are, because they've got a perfect distribution method, but communicate with your employees to start to talk about these things. And I think business owners as well have started to understand that, if you look at the average sick days in the UK and what the causes are, more and more it's becoming around mental health issues. And it's not just one thing. It's not just finances or stress or whatever it is. It's a number of different things. And sometimes one thing can become the next. And being able to identify those triggers and put things in place that can support employees is really important. And for me, it's for the next 2, 3, 5 years on the back of COVID and what's going to come out at the end of it, when we finally get to a position where we can get back to doing the things we used to do. There's going to be a real lag and a real need for everybody to really focus on their mental health, how they come out of that post-COVID position, what the lasting impacts are, and as employers, what we can do to support our employees, not just from the perspective of those that are here now, but I think more and more people that are looking to join a business will be asking the questions. I'm quite prepared to work hard and do the things I need to do, but as an employer, there has to be that give and take of, what are the things you're going to do to help support me? Because the more happy somebody is, and the more focused they are in work, the more engaged they are, more productive they are, which is, it's a fairly well-known concept. But I think from a mental health perspective, COVID has really accelerated what I see as the key element of any employee benefits strategy, which is well-being.
No, brilliant, thank you. And this is why we like to do these webinars and bring in key individuals and organizations like yourself, particularly focused on financial well-being, working with lots of customers and supporting lots of organizations, both in the UK and internationally. Stribe is helping those heads of well-being or heads of HR or heads of people to ask the questions about what is worrying you or how are you feeling. And what we're seeing more and more of is prompts of financial well-being and stability of my role. And there's two parts to that. There's what's the organization going to do about that and support in terms of communication that your role is safe, or if it's not, then what we're doing about that to protect you. And then there's the other side of it of what you can do individually to empower yourself to make sure that if the worst case scenario happens or doesn't, that you're prepared and your finances in the right place to prevent you from worrying or panicking down the road. So delighted to have you on today, Rob, and really looking forward to the presentation, because it's about finding, we all talk about these topics, but everyone's looking for the so what. Okay, once we identify how people are feeling, understand what can we do, what can we offer, what can we put in place to start to support that. So whilst you're preparing for the presentation, if you want to pop that up and share your screen, yeah. Rob, I'll just share with the audience two powerful and scary stats to set the scene, I think, when we talk about kind of individuals across the UK. Please do ask your questions in the Q&A box as Rob goes through the presentation, because that will help us to really inform the discussion at the end. But in terms of the two powerful and scary stats, in England currently, over 1.5 million people are experiencing both problem debt and mental health problems, according to Money and Mental Health 2020. And a staggering 5.6 million people have fallen into arrears or borrowed to make ends meet, according to the Money charity. So it's a very, very important topic to ensure that you're proactively communicating and asking your employees how they're feeling, particularly are they being supported from a financial well-being point of view, and ultimately making sure that you can put strategies and solutions into place. So Rob, I'm going to be quiet and hand over to you, and really looking forward to the next 20 minutes of your presentation.
Okay. Hope everybody can see that.
Yep, we can see that clearly.
Yeah, great. Yes, as Michael says, what I'm going to do is, I guess, just run through a few findings that came out of a report that we commissioned towards the end of last year. I then really want to look at what you can do to create a strategy around financial well-being, but rather than just give you the kind of talking points of, step 1, build a framework, step 2, implement something. I want to give you a bit more structure around what those sessions should look like, and the way that we work with clients, and what we found has really worked in terms of a first phase of the things that you need to think about, and how those sessions should look. So most businesses, obviously, we're all aware of the financial impact of mental health and well-being. The stresses that people have faced have not just been around financial and potentially what's going to happen to their role. They're obviously thinking about loved ones, elderly people, me included, in terms of childcare, the stresses that caused, with looking after a child, having 2 parents working full time. So there's been a huge amount of pressure put on everybody, not just from a financial perspective. Public sector was slightly less affected based on our research, so the concerns were still there, but I think that they felt there was more job security. But I think the two stats, the two outcomes that came out of this report were around income disruption. So the body represents financial industry, and banks and lenders have looked at how many people have taken personal loan payments, 2 million mortgage payments and deferrals, and 1 million credit card payment holidays. And there are things there that obviously jump out significantly. One is obviously the ability to pay. 2 is that actually when we ran this report, there's probably been a further increase in those numbers. And 3, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what these payment holidays mean to people. So how it affects their credit ratings, the fact that actually all they're doing is just deferring debt, and are they incurring other debts, as Michael said, in the meantime, to cover off living expenses. So there's almost, I wouldn't say it was a tidal wave, but there's almost a kind of a reckoning of what's going to happen in the personal finance sector. And the big thing, I think, for us, and I guess where we'll come on to these slides, is to think about just having more time to pay your debts on delays a problem. And Step Change, one of the charities, noticed there's around 4.6 million people that have been negatively affected by coronavirus. And that extra burden of debt is around about 6.1 billion. And we're estimating that average debts will rise by over £1,000 per household, along with a further increase in arrears. And when we ran these stats, this was before the extension of furlough. So potentially there is even a bigger tidal wave to come. So I think that just really establishes that even before COVID, there was a need to think about financial education and financial planning for everybody. But I think now it's really the point in which it's a critical thing for everybody, whatever stage of life or whatever stage of your finances you're at, is to think about how you can improve that position. And when we did the survey, we spoke to employers, we spoke to 750 employers. And we asked them what are the things that your employees have been worried about. So quite a few employers, quite rightly, have been communicating regularly with their employees to think about what are the things that you're most worried about. And naturally, the top one of those was around losing their jobs and the health of their family. But after that, the top one was around personal finances. So everybody, I think, was concerned about mortgage payments, about them or their partner being made redundant or put onto furlough. How does that affect them? How does it affect everything around their normal working lives? So for most employers, in terms of thinking about the things that they want to be able to do for their employees, it was always around how can we help them to do something with their personal finances. The pandemic and the lockdown, I've had a bit of a stop-start feel, as I'm sure we've all experienced. we've had this issue around measures being relaxed, and we feel that actually maybe, in August last year that things were starting to improve and people were starting to head back in the office on a rota basis, and then all of a sudden the restrictions start again. And when we've seen that, it tends to kind of increase stress levels. So the new normal, and businesses have had to adapt and constantly shift the conditions to manage their business and their employees. So businesses that we're talking to are trying to almost preempt and to say, well, okay, when we're managing our workforce in the midst of COVID, what are the things that we can almost future forecast or to do to make sure that we whatever the circumstances, whether it's an easing of lockdown, whether it's a new lockdown, what can we do to help employees, especially from a financial and mental well-being perspective. And I think the big thing for us is that putting these things in place now or improving on the things that you already have will be essential going forward. I think, as I mentioned before, putting these good practices in place, getting people into the mindset of, okay, now my finances are really at the forefront of what I'm thinking about. It's maybe giving me a bit of a wake-up call as to getting control of my finances and creating those good behaviours, alongside the support that you as an employer can provide is key, because it will have a good long-term lasting effect on their finances in the future. And the graphic to the right just shows from our survey what employers were looking to implement over the next 6 months. And the top one was around mental health and wellbeing, somewhere around payroll services, insurances, those sorts of things. Excuse me. But the key thing that came out of that report was to think about mental health and wellbeing, especially on the financial side of things. And this next slide just talks through the 4 key considerations that when we talk to employers, what are the 4 things that we see as key to creating a financial wellbeing strategy. And to us, it's creating a sense of security and control for everybody over their finances. I think one of the biggest things that's come out of the surveys and the conversations that we have with employers, and sometimes with employees as well, is that they don't feel that they have control. They're not quite sure where their money's going. They're not quite sure how to get a handle on their finances. And ultimately having those finances in good order will allow them to have the freedom to make choices, and having the ability to make the choices that we want to make tend to make us feel happier. So, that old phrase about money doesn't bring happiness. What it does do is bring you freedom and choices and some comfort. So that's part of what we think is essential to a financial wellbeing strategy. I think the second thing is to recognise that financial wellbeing is not standalone. It's a key pillar of wellbeing. When we think about wellbeing as a business, we think about 4 key pillars: the financial wellbeing, mental health and wellbeing, the social wellbeing, and the physical wellbeing. As I mentioned, the social and physical wellbeing, I think, have been more at the forefront of the last few years, but I think now the shift towards mental health and financial health and wellbeing is really where businesses need to focus over the next sort of 12, 18, 24 months. And COVID as well has made a lot of people realise that historically defined areas are not as rigid as they once were. So thinking about social, economic, people are constantly evolving, businesses are changing, lifestyles are changing, the things people want from life are changing. So it's being able to recognise what those changes are, potentially being able to anticipate what they are. But again, when it comes to any kind of well-being reward strategy, it's all about future planning, flexibility, and the ability to be able to evolve that over time to meet the needs of employees. And the last one that we always say to everybody really is that it doesn't really matter how old you are or how much you earn. Everybody has the capacity to worry about their finances. I always say to people, I don't feel I've ever had any more money in my pocket than I did 20 years ago. I just have bigger bills. It's that sort of feeling. So it's helping people to understand and appreciate that they're not on their own, that everybody has worries about finances, no matter what they earn, what their job is, how close they are to retirement, what their personal circumstances are. Everybody has that capacity, and having support tools and mechanisms and plans in place to help alleviate those those worries is key. So those would be the four things that we would think about when we discuss financial well-being. And going forward, I guess, from that, this is a fairly rough outline of what somebody's financial journey may look like. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody will fit in here somewhere differently, and everybody will be at this stage. So, starting at the beginning of maybe a first job, thinking about how they budget and how they manage their money to make sure that they don't overspend or they don't get into debt. A lot of what we do with Open Money and the technology we have is to help people to manage money and to get a clear picture and to take control of finances. So, the amount of people that still don't open bank statements or just kind of hope in a prayer of that things will work out okay. The first stage of getting to a financially good place is to recognize what your current position is, where you are on that timeline, focus on where you want to be financially, and to take the right steps to get there. So everybody will be somewhere on that graph, and what we try and do is to create a plan or sessions or a strategy that will cover off all of the things within that plan, because depending on how big your business is and what type of demographic you have within your workforce, everybody pretty much will be at some point on there. There are sometimes people that look at strategies and think, well, let's just split it by, we'll have a salary cut-off point. People earning over X will put into one session. People earning under that will put into another, or we'll split it by age. So, 18 to 30, we'll put in this one, 30 to 45, 45 to 60. It's okay as a general rule, but I'll guarantee you there'll be people in their 30s and 40s who are awful at managing money. And likewise, there'll be people in their early 20s who are brilliant because they use technology, they understand, they're really under control. So there's no one size fits all. But those are the kind of key milestones within most people's lives, and understanding how their finances fit in with that is really important. So I'm just going to run you through kind of 3 sessions that we run for businesses. These tends to be when we look at a financial wellbeing strategy, when we talk to employers and then subsequently talk to their employees, whether that's in the workplace or whether that's by virtual sessions and Q&As and things like that. There are 3 kind of key steps, and it's a progression. So starting with the foundations of finance and working your way through to get into the position where you are financially secure. So the first one, and the key session for any financial wellbeing strategy, is creating financial foundations. So helping people to understand and manage their finances, because there's no point going off onto Stage 3 and paying into ISAs and buying shares and going on trading platforms if you don't know how to manage your money or set budgets or create goals. So this is the absolute key for any financial wellbeing proposition and plan. And the first one is money management. As I say, people don't automatically get taught how to create a budget. They don't understand what budget is. They don't understand the benefits of a budget, so helping you to create more discretionary money. So the more money that you can save on the things you have to spend money on, bills and rent and mortgages and those sorts of things, the more discretionary money you will create to go off and do the things you want to do. So budgeting is really, really important. The second one is financial independence. Everybody wants to be financially independent. Nobody wants to be reliant on anybody else. And a lot of that is around, creating the right behaviors. So talking about debt management, how you manage debts, how you pay off debt is really important as well. Educating people on borrowing. So how does, what's the difference between a flat interest rate and APR? How does, the balance transfer rate on a credit card work? How does my credit rating affect the interest rate that I'm given? The kind of basic stuff, but understanding how those things work and making informed choices is really key. And the other one, a part of that is to start thinking about the future. So, giving people the plan and the roadmap to say, okay, well, if this is the position you're in, so whether it is debt management, paying off debt, and understanding how borrowing works, is to get them to the point when it's actually great. We've now got to a position where they can start to think about the future. So how they save, types of saving, all the different things that are out there to be able to create and start to create some savings and some wealth. And the third one, that in terms of behaviours, is around the prerequisites to those goals. So understanding, they need to have a savings buffer. I think COVID has probably brought this to the fore more than anybody. I mean, the stats that show the percentage of adults in the UK that have less than £500 in accessible savings, it's always floated around that 50% mark, and it's probably gone slightly higher now. So just understanding the need to have that financial buffer, for a rainy day or should the worst happen. Types of investments, as Michael and I were talking before about the rise in influencers and people like that getting involved with investments, which is a really risky thing to do, to invest in single shares and things like that. But understanding how investments work, what they are, what's the best thing for them to start to save into. Is it a savings account? Is it an ISA? Those sorts of things. Find the best deal. So the difference between the lowest interest rate on a savings account and the highest interest rate. How do I find that? How do I get that information? Choosing the right provider to pay money into. The right products, again, that feeds back into before looking at the right deals. Preparing for the unexpected, so the savings buffer element and how you do that. So is that done with savings? Is that done with looking at insurance type products like income protection and critical illness cover? And the last one is planning for the future. So understanding where you want to be in 3, 5, 10, 15 years time. Is it about early retirement? Is it about paying off your mortgage early? Is it about getting to a position where you become financially independent? So setting those prerequisite goals and creating those correct behaviours within here is so important. And financial independence for everybody, as I mentioned, is a key requisite. And giving people the confidence to support their short and long term goals is really key. There's still a lot of stigma around asking questions around personal finances. So if somebody wants to know more about a bank account, do they feel embarrassed or ashamed to ask those questions? Where do they get that information from? If the only information they're getting it from is the web or an influencer or whoever it may be, that's probably not the right place to be getting that information from. So to have that framework in place to create these key core behaviours for everybody will then help them to get on that step journey to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. Second session we run after that is the Building the Financial Futures section. This really is about getting people to the position where they're now able to start building wealth and provide security and independence for themselves and for their families. And one of the key things on that step, I think, for most people is home owning. And home owning, just going through the home buying process, saving for a property, for a lot of people is incredibly daunting. So being able to talk through, how you go about buying a house, what it costs, what are the hidden costs, what are the costs of ownership, the secrets and myths, everything from legal fees, stamp duty, what happens if you're in a relationship and the relationship breaks up, what happens to the property, all those different things. It's almost a topic on its own, but it's one of the key things that people get into above that financial foundation stage ask about. So it's really key to be able to educate and provide support on home owning. It's also by far, probably apart from divorce, the most stressful thing that most people will do. So there is a stress element to that as well, and how that that feeds into the other things that you support employees around stress and stress management. So really key element to it. The second part of building financial future is around protection, and protection really is around insurances. So what do you need to insure? Is it your income? Is it your life? Is it your property? Is it your family? How much do I need to cover myself for? What's the best way of taking out cover? What happens if my circumstances change? How do I increase cover, or how do I do those sorts of things? So having that protection element again feeds into having confidence and reassurance, and being happier in your own personal financial position, because you feel that if something happens to you or your spouse, your partner, that there is that safety net there. So it's one of the big considerations around planning your financial future. The third thing that we look at we're building the financial future element of wellbeing proposition is retirement savings. So the difference between somebody starting to pay into a pension at 20 compared to 40 is huge. And I think that the stats show that around about age 40 is when people start to really focus on retirement. And for some people that can be a little bit too late because they've just deferred saving into a pension beforehand, and giving people the information around why it's so important to start saving as much as they can, as soon as they can, with life expectancy increasing, with changes in state pensions, with lots of other things going on in the background, is to help people to understand, what pensions are, the fact that tax efficient, the joy of investing in compound interest, so investing a little bit less, but maybe over a longer period, and how that works. I think helping to think about when they would like to retire, how they would like to retire, what they would like to see their retirement look like, and then understanding that those things need to be regularly reviewed, and helping them understand pensions in general. I mean, they're one of the most complicated financial products, or probably the most complicated financial product, but for most people it will be potentially the biggest asset they ever accrue. For some people, for quite a lot of people, the pension pot will be bigger and more valuable than their property. But so many people just don't feel in control of how a pension works, how tax relief works, when can I take my cash, what happens if I change jobs, all those sorts of things. So it's really, really key at this stage for people to really understand retirement savings, because going back to the other piece, the more an individual understands about their finances and how things work, the more comfortable and confident they are, and the more likely they are to save money into those particular plans, and the more likely they are to have a happier and more comfortable retirement. So that's a really big, probably the key one on here. And in terms of the outcomes of that type of session, building a session around those key areas, as I said, it's understanding what to do and when to do it. And if they understand it, they're going to earn, keep, and grow the money that they receive. So really, really key session. The third session that we look at is, I guess, the final one, and that's attaining financial security. So holding on to the money and the wealth that you've created, protecting and using it effectively in the future. Income in retirement is a big one. So pension rules changed back in 2016 in terms of how you can take out retirement income. So understanding pensions, again, is key. But now when you get to the position, employees get to the position of how to take the money, when they take it, what's the best way to do it. State pension has obviously seen a few changes over the last couple of years around the universal state pension, around the increase for women in terms of equalisation of state retirement age, how they can access and buy additional years from deferments, all those sorts of things. So retirement planning is complicated on its own, but it's really key, I think, going back to the previous slide around pensions, for individuals to understand how pensions work in general. The second thing that we look at is to look at risks in retirement. So we look at longevity risk, which is essentially outliving your cash. We look at investment risk. So in the early years of any investment, you've got the opportunity to ride out cycles in the market and crashes and peaks and those sorts of things. But in retirement, because you've got no other income, you're almost fixing that position. So helping to individuals to understand if their cash is at risk and how they mitigate that risk. Inflation's a big one. So not all pensions are index linked, and how it will affect and decrease the value of your pension over time, and the sustainability as well of lifestyle and those sorts of things. So risks of retirement are another part that feeds into income at retirement, but again, a key element to this session. And not to be morbid, but legacy planning is a big part of retirement planning and financial security. So thinking about wills and lasting power of attorneys, trusts and gifts, a gift into children and grandchildren, what happens to you, to your pensions, should you die, where does that money go to? And thinking about whole of life protection as well. So there are particular plans that can pay for everything from funeral costs up to inheritance tax bills and those sorts of things. So this is really at the end of, getting us to the position of, great, we've created wealth, we're in control of our finances, we're heading towards retirement, about to go into retirement. this is the next step in terms of what I need to do. Now, this is not aimed at 65-year-olds. This really is aimed at people at 40 plus. None of us want to think about our own mortality, but these things are key to get in place early to get the most out of them. And again, having a plan, feeling confident about it is all about financial well-being. It's all about control, taking control of your finances, being comfortable about your position, understanding the products or the services that you are paying for or investing in. Because the more that we do that, the more comfortable and happy we are, and the more that we can feel that we are really attaining the goals that we want to achieve. So those are kind of 3 examples of sessions that we run. For some businesses, we split them out when we do 6 sessions. So we may focus one specifically around, say, home buying, or may focus one specifically around pensions. So there's a range of things that you can do. But for us, those are the three key steps when you're thinking about creating a financial wellbeing plan, or maybe adapting or enhancing or whatever it may be about an existing plan. Those are the 3 key areas that we find we get most engagement with, that we get most questions about, and that employers approach us to come in and talk to people about, because those are the three key areas that really fit into that timeline. And there's a few things to think about from a delivery and engagement perspective. So where to start? So I'm sure you've heard the word framework bandied about, but that really is the kind of key elements to where do I start from. So creating a framework of, okay, these are the three, 4, 5, 6 things we want to get out of a financial wellbeing plan. So is it, a percentage increase in engagement? Are you going to survey, post-survey, how it's going to work? Creating a framework that fits in well with your other strategy as well. So don't see financial wellbeing as a standalone. It obviously feeds into those other 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier around wellbeing, but it's also the wider scope of things. So, what other benefits and strategies do you have in place that will help to improve people's financial wellbeing? So whether it's offering retail discounts or salary sacrifice benefits, or ability to save into pensions and ISAs through payroll, all those sorts of things. So don't see it in isolation. It forms part of a bigger picture. How do you deliver positive outcomes in a post-COVID world of work? I guess that depends on each individual business and how that business will perform and trade post-COVID. So as a business, are you going to keep and remain with remote working? You're going to have flexibility. How does that then affect the way that you can communicate these things? So if at the moment you're using weekly or staff meetings or sessions or webinars, do you need to think about introducing technology to help employees to engage with a financial wellbeing plan and to have their own personalized plan? So that's something to consider. Considering the individual, so although we talk about groups and whether that's age demographic or earnings, always think about the individual. The big one that I think most employees worry about is confidentiality. There's still a stigma to talking around personal finances and what those look like for that any particular individual, especially around debt and debt management. So having something in place where employees feel that their information is treated confidentially, they can have conversations that are confidential is key. And tailoring the approach, I think. So if you've got different a head office type working group, and then you've got a distribution element. So how do those different areas of your business need a slightly different approach? So thinking about that is important. Creating a feedback loop is with any benefit strategy is really, really key. So having that constant feedback and improving and acting on those positive and negative feedback elements is really key. And the last one I would say is be wary of Trojan horses. There's been a few businesses in the last few years that have really tried to get into the financial wellbeing in the workplace arena. A lot of them are worthy businesses, they are good businesses, but there are also ones that really have tried to tap into the decline of things like payday lenders. So they'll come along and offer to create a great workplace financial wellbeing plan for you. They'll come and do sessions and provide you loads of collateral and ideas. But ultimately, what they're looking to do is to provide short-term loans or financing to your employees. So I'm not saying that you should ignore them completely, but just be wary that that can potentially create issues for you going forward. So just, I guess, a little bit about Open Money. So as I mentioned, we've been making financial advice affordable for kind of 3 years now. We created WorkLife last year to be able to access employers and to help them support financial education of their employees. And we do that primarily through technology. So we have our employee benefits platform. We have our app, which does everything from money management to combining bank accounts, so you can view all your transactions, set your saving goals and budgets, save money on credit cards and bills. We've just signed up with Experian, so you can look at things like credit rating as well. And it's a really useful tool to be able to get those financial foundations in place. And then we also partner with a company called Stribe, which is a health and wellbeing app. So that feeds quite well into what we do around financial wellbeing. It's the only NHS approved app out there at the moment. And we use that to complement the financial wellbeing services that we offer, because we understand that financial wellbeing isn't all just about finances. It feeds into, as I mentioned, the wider wellbeing arena. And that's just a little bit about our eBester project, which is an online investment tool. Okay, well, that's just a really brief overview of what we do and some of the things that work for us. Obviously, we're here to take any questions, and hopefully it's kind of sparked some ideas and things you might want to discuss or to talk through in terms of maybe the strategy that you have at the moment, or improving it, or some tips on some of the things that work for us. So I'll hand back to Michael.
Brilliant, Rob. I've scribbled about 5 A4s, both personally and also to support my employees, and it's really helped me from a CEO's point of view to understand the importance of that topic, because there's some great questions popping up, and I'll answer them in a second. But the word sort of, how do you not become intrusive in the questions that you ask? We'll not answer that just yet. There are a few points to make, but that's what made me think about, God, I should be talking to my employees. I know the salaries they're on. I know what I pay them. I know what we try and do as a business and how we support that well-being side. But yeah, if we're chucking all the other parts of the pillars out and not truly addressing and supporting someone if there's a real challenge, and they're just nodding away saying that's fine. And you mentioned the feedback loop. That's what Stribe does. That's what we do as a business. It's about how we support that feedback loop. But the feedback loop needs to have the strategy in between and plugging that in. So there's just 4 key points from me after some of the notes that I hope the audience will relate to. Maybe not the first one. I'm right between kind of first home and marriage and family. And personally already worried about how I afford a wedding in a year and a half time, and hoping that I can actually just have 30 guests and COVID. But when you think about the context of that, understanding your employees' needs of where they are on that journey, everyone absolutely is. We have a bell curve that looks at the average life satisfaction by age. And it shows starting off, coming out of university, the reality of and it all actually links back to getting more excited to retirement. But that only stays true if you can help those employees at different stages to prevent the dips on the curves. Yeah. Asking your employees is key. So, filtering this topic into one of your 4 pillars will help you to make this conversation part of the day-to-day. That's really, really important. And how you're measuring it. This feedback loop's really, really important, because you might provide all this great information from Workday, from day one, from WorkLife, so from day one, and ultimately then going, well, what's next? You can't just leave this conversation. It has to become part of that continual feedback loop, as you mentioned at the start, Rob. Yeah. And just, ultimately, we use a principle called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which some people may or may not have heard about. And there's different pillars. And survival's right at the bottom. And this is ultimately what we're talking about here. We're talking about people surviving to have the financial freedom, the comfort to be able to thrive throughout that journey to the growth stage. And if you do not have these pillars, all 4 pillars, including financial well-being, addressed in your organization, it will not help you to grow in the next month, the next year, the next 5 years going forward. Yeah. So thank you for that. Really, really great presentation. And I'm enthused and certainly going to try and get you in for a session for the team, I'm sure, because I'm sure it will help some of them to think about their finances, particularly the younger ones, about what they can do if they start saving now from a pension point of view. Some have opted in, some haven't, but the importance of getting that decision right now will help the future.
Yeah.
So we've got 15 minutes and lots of people still on the call. So I'm going to start at the top. We've had some upvotes on questions. Rob, I'll put them to you, and if I can add any value, I certainly will. So first one from Sarah Murphy. Thank you for the question, Sarah. Are you focused on the UK, or would your sessions be suitable for European-wide?
I think the sessions in terms of behaviours are fine for European-wide. Obviously, what we're doing is focused for UK employees, but in terms of in Europe, I mean, people in any country will need the same basic principles of saving, spending budgets, all those sorts of things. Obviously, retirement is slightly different because different countries have different regimes, but the basic principles are still there in terms of creating the right behaviours and the right discipline. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be able to do that.
Great, perfect. I think the message clear there, Sarah, is we will send out information afterwards, include Rob's connections and details, and pass that back to the team. So you can have a conversation, and if he can support you, certainly will, I'm sure, with the team.
Yeah.
How would you recommend a business addresses their employees' financial well-being without seeming intrusive? This was my own point.
Yeah.
It's important to do, but how do you start that conversation?
It's difficult. It's, as I say, mental health in general has been a topic that only in the last couple of years people have started to feel more open, and there's still a stigma attached to it. I think everybody's aware of that, but things are improving. And finances are they're extremely personal to individuals. So I think being able to create a strategy, so whether that's using technology or whether that's using a third party or whatever that may be, to say that, look, we're going to create a completely confidential process. So we're going to help you create the right behaviours, the right things to do. If you have questions that are related to your own personal circumstances, if you don't want to work with a business, say like Open Money, where we've got technology and individuals have accounts, that you can create ways that, whether that's a panel of recommended advisors, or whether that is, here's 3 different technology companies that offer free budgeting tools, whether that's whoever that may be. So to create the right behaviours and point them in the right direction, I think what individual employees will be worried about is, if I've got debt, for example, is that going to affect my chances of a pay rise or promotion, or are they going to try, it's that sort of thing. Are they going to be worried that I'm going to be stressed and therefore I'm taking time off sick? So I think just being able to have mechanisms in place that will mean that employees are confident that any information they share won't be disclosed to anybody within the business. I mean, obviously, as you say, every employer knows what they pay their employees. What they don't really know is what their outgoings are and what their personal financial circumstances are. And it is a difficult question to ask. But I think trying to create an environment of openness. So if the senior people in the business can talk to their employees to say, look, when I was younger, or when I was a more junior position, I had credit card debt, I struggle with this, this is how I got out of it. So to be able to give positive stories to those individuals and say, I'm quite happy for you to come to me on a one-on-one basis, and we can have a private, confidential conversation with us, or if you want, we can arrange for a third party to be involved, so that you have that confidence of confidentiality. But I think it's like with any behaviours in a business, I think the senior leadership team of that business demonstrating those things gives a lot of confidence to everybody else in the business that they can start to have those conversations.
Yeah, Rob, and just building on that's a lot of work in what we do as Stribe in terms of helping leadership teams to have that conversation and build a trusted environment. And my points here is you need to be able to start to have the conversation and make people feel confident about building that psychological safety and that psychological trust from the top-down approach, in the same way as you mentioned that we have, where we're sharing stories of stress, but maybe not the why. And if that why relates to financial challenges, then just go that one step further. But for us, we've supported organizations like Barclays and Wigan Council to ask those questions to employees in a really confidential way, because once you get a confirmation bias, once 80% of people would like to be able to talk because that's what they're worried about, you're then there. You've then got someone like yourselves that support and training. You've got the solution and the strategy to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's great having access to some brilliant technology and spending time and money on creating a great financial well-being program and support network. But unless you get people comfortable talking about these things, they're still going to be guarded about, should I really be going into this in my workplace, or is this something I need to keep private? We did a session with our CEO a few weeks ago, an hour session, so 88 people in our business, and it was just an hour. You can ask me anything. So a lot of it was around his finances and how he created the business and other things before. Completely open and honest about it. Talked about how there was times where he had no money, the times where he had debt, and then times where he created wealth and lost wealth and all those sorts of things. Because I think sometimes people maybe look at senior people in a business and think, well, they're really successful and they've got lots of money, but they don't understand what that journey's been like. And I guarantee you, pretty much everybody within every business has been on that roller coaster of having money and not having money, and understanding that everybody's somewhere on that pathway. So yeah, absolutely key to have those conversations openly.
Fantastic. One final question. I'm conscious of time, and then we'll wrap up after this question. But do you think it is a responsibility of an employer, as the giver of a salary, to ensure that their employees feel financially positive? It's a great question.
I don't know if it's a responsibility. I think in the same way that any strategy or benefit or something, anything that you provide to your employees, whether it's keeping them safe or whether that's reporting functions, whatever it may be, I think it's something that is a good thing to do. I think there's a duty of care for employers to take care of their employees in general. We all make sure that our offices or our home working environments are safe from a health and safety perspective. We all make sure that that we will do the things to keep them safe. So I don't really see the difference between doing that and providing support around mental, physical health and well-being, around retirement savings. I think it's all encompassing. And I think going back to what I mentioned before, there's much more emphasis now for employers to be able to demonstrate to individuals why they should come and work for you, not just we're advertising a job. You have to sell yourself to us. There's a two-way thing now there, that kind of EVP thing that's been talked about the last couple of years, to understand how that will work. So for me, I think there is a responsibility there, and it falls into that wider scope of the duty of care to the people that work for your business.
Yeah, and my personal view was aligned with you there, Rob, in the fact that it comes down for me of talent management. If I want to keep my employees to the best of my ability, there will be certain points where there'll be offers that I may not be able to match, or I may be able to match in time. But if I create an environment that is caring and trusting for both employees to myself and employee to employee, where they feel that all of these aspects come together, I need to take responsibility of that if I truly want to be able to say I can keep my employees happy, safe, and engaged. But with that, the 4 pillars of my wellbeing strategy need to be aligned, and it's only myself to look at if I can't match that salary or I haven't grown in that way. But absolutely, it's a consideration of that duty of care, in the same way that become COVID safe in your office, in the environment, is making sure that someone is safe in their home in any capacity, because they're still working for you and under that care.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when we look at wellbeing strategies in general, and then the statistics that show why people leave businesses, and they're 5 times more likely to leave a business where they don't feel that they're valued on a personal level. So with any benefit strategy or any wellbeing strategy, you won't always get 100% engagement. You will always get people that just are not interested in it at all. I used to look after pension schemes with non-contributory pension schemes, and people still wouldn't join because they didn't trust pensions. So that education piece is important. But I think just having those things in place, the more that you can make your employees feel comfortable, happy in their positions, and that they're supported if they have a need, the more likely they are to perform well, and the more likely they are to stay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just wrapping up there. I think that's a really clear message to make sure that, ultimately, from the organizational point of view, if you're trying to grow high performing teams, then you need to get the basis of this right, and financial well-being as a pillar is a key part of that, to make sure all my staff feel happy and safe.
Especially now.
Absolutely. So, brilliant presentation from Alam Ahmad. Thank you very much indeed. And we've had one anonymous attendee asking, can we get a copy of the slides? I'm sure Rob will be able to follow up with both a copy of the slides, and I'd made a note that you're okay to follow up with the SME report that you commissioned. Is that all right to pass out to the audience as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a report we commissioned with 3Gen towards the end of last year. So as I mentioned, we surveyed independently 750 employers to get an idea of how they were coping with lockdown, but also the things that they're looking to do as we move out of COVID restrictions over the next 12 months. So we'll share that with you as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Just to summarize the conversation as I've listened to it, and I hope it resonates with everybody on the call. Laura, Philo, thank you so much for your kind praise for us both in this. If we can summarize in 3 points, we need to start the conversation around mental health and wellbeing of staff in general, but in order to support the financial pillar, bring that in, keep that part of that overall wellbeing strategy. Find a way in which you can build trust to have that conversation, start the conversation with systems like Stribe, where the conversation can be supported through technology during COVID. Your wellbeing strategy is really, really key. And if financial wellbeing isn't a part of that, then speak to Rob and the team, or think about how you can incorporate that. It may just be pointed in the right direction. You might be doing a lot of it, but not realizing it's joined up. So speak to the experts around that. And ensure that you put strategies and solutions. So once people want to have that conversation and they're willing to say to you they are struggling, make sure that you have people like the elements of Rob and his teams being able to support you. Make sure technology is in place. Make sure that you have some sort of short-term and long-term strategies around that, because it's creating that feedback loop to drive forward. Rob, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we could speak for hours on this topic. It's a passion of mine. I know it is yours. Thank you so much to yours and the team's time. And we'll make sure we follow up in full with your details. But everybody in the audience, have a wonderful week. Keep safe, keep well, keep financially stable. And again, please do have a look at Rob's websites and team. And again, thank you, Rob, and speak soon.
Welcome. Pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.